365 Days of Horsemanship, day 193. So today's been a pretty nice day. The vet came to see Lawrence, and there's good news, which is that he is sound now behind. He's striding out quite short, both hinds, but they are equal now, whereas before he was lame on the right hind. So that's really positive because he's had that hock injected, which indicates, you know, sort of suggests that we're going down this line of like something arthritis related. And the vet has some good suggestions, so now we're just kind of waiting and hoping that the insurance will pay out for that. But it was good and it was nice, and you know, I went to get him, haltered him, and brought him up. The haltering again, it was like a no, but it was just sort of a couple of no's, and then it was okay. We put the halter on and we came down. He didn't really want to come down with me, but did, and definitely got into a rhythm. And then we had a nice, you know, he moved nicely in the arena again, and that was nice. The vet has suggested that the thing that's probably holding him back the most now is strength and fitness, which I probably would agree with. Which throws a bit of a wrench in our freedom-based training plan, because it sort of invites this necessity for physical fitness work. Which ultimately is going to have to be dominant. But I have some good ideas, actually, based on the session that I had with Mia today. Because I was feeling a little bit like unsure of how I was going to manage that whilst keeping the relationship, maintaining the relationship. Because I feel like we're already in a precarious position. I feel like all this work at the touching distance, that's been overwhelming as it is. And so I was quite concerned about it. I spent a little time with him in the field after the vet left, just being in flow. And kind of, I don't know, I'm starting to think that maybe I'm being too direct line generally in my work with the freedom-based training. Like, I'm coming in with all these big ideas about what I want and when I want the horses to react to things that I'm going to do. And it's kind of not really the core point of freedom-based training. Like, I don't know if I'm actually giving Lawrence enough time to express himself before I want to start making him express things or causing him to feel certain ways about anything or something or whatever. Yeah, so I think I'm going to post about that definitely later on tonight in the group, and just get some people's like spitballing ideas and just see where people are at with that whole concept. So yeah, but I mean, I think it's to be honest, I don't know what it is. It's just something about the energy is just off. I feel like I'm an irritation to him. I think I find it, like with Mia, I think I understand her better, and I think her no's are less offensive to me than Lawrence's no's. I think Mia and I are much more similar innately. I think we're both really like fighters, rather than flighters, and I think we're both quite dramatic. Like with Mia, everything's very dramatic and extrovertly dramatic, but then actually she's then quite forgiving as long as you will then make the change. Like, you can make the change immediately and she will allow it. Like, if you continually make mistakes, then she will get long-term annoyed with you. But I don't know, in some ways I find her to be much more, she's got much stronger strength of curiosity, and she's much quicker to forgive than Lawrence is, much quicker to recharge for the next situation. She has a much bigger capacity to allow for experimentation and just movement and action generally, I think. Whereas with Lawrence, if something happens that makes him feel uncomfortable, it takes him a really long time before he can feel okay about it again, which means progress is really slow. And then also it's hard then to work out what you've done wrong when everything you try just sort of makes things worse. Like once he gets to a certain place, it's like he doesn't want to do anything. And I think I need to go back and settle that concern. And I think the answer to that is more distance work and more flow work. And then I just need to learn to not put him in that place anymore. But it's much harder for me to see that. And I find it much more frustrating. With Mia, like, I get it. Like, I've asked for something. I've asked it the wrong way, or I've been annoying. She's gotten annoyed, and that's it. And then it's, like, over, and then we're on to the next thing. And then I have a chance to redeem myself. And, like, that makes a lot more sense to me. That more aligns with the kind of person I am. And, like, I understand that behavior pattern more. Whereas with Lawrence, I don't think him and I have so much in common. And it is much harder for me. And I think I feel it much more personally, because I think, like, he does these sort of, like, over-exaggerated disconnections where it's like, you know, when you get, like, a small child and you're like, they're annoyed with you and they're like, I'm not talking to you, I'm ignoring you, and you're like, well, you're actually kind of talking to me right now, and they're like, no, I'm not talking to you. And it's like he's like deliberately and proactively not connecting with me, and maybe that's just my human perception, but that is the way it feels. That he's much more like, that's his, like, he'll like leave mentally from the situation, whereas Mia will stay engaged and be like, I'm really annoyed with you, and she'll like engage that with you and like express her emotions at you, and then you have an opportunity to respond appropriately or inappropriately. And if you respond appropriately, she will return to a state of being more comfortable. And maybe I just need to not be afraid to leave Lawrence, and to be like, okay, yeah, fine, I'll just go further away then, that's no problem. Maybe that's his way of playing, I don't know. Don't know, we'll see. Definitely tricky. Today I had an interesting session with Mia though. I went to Mia and she was quite disengaged on the grass, didn't really look up at me as I came in, and I just had this feeling that she was quite cold and uncomfortable in her body from all of this rain and wind and horrible weather. And so I decided to put the halter on her. I hadn't actually intended to. I thought I would just do some flow, but then she really wasn't very engaged. And so I kind of went out on a limb, managed to halter her. It did take a while. There were a few no's. Like, I opened up like the halter, and she like started walking immediately. So we made it like halfway up the hill just with her walking, but she kind of took me with her. It didn't really, like, it was flight, but it felt like we were doing it together, so it was okay. Managed to get the halter on. Did kind of compromise on that a little bit. She came right over to the hay bale, and I basically eventually like just snuck it on while she was looking out the herd. And yeah, and then I basically, because we'd done this little bit of walking anyway, basically just walked her like a tiny bit, and then just asked her for a trot in one direction, and it felt like it, after a few times it felt good, and then asked her for a trot in the other direction, and it felt good, and she did this big look and chew. So I took the halter off, and oh my goodness, she had the biggest yawn ever. And then she had this massive rest where she's looking and chewing, and she's looking up at me with this really soft expression. Then she's sniffing the grass, and I can tell she's thinking about whether or not she's hungry. And then she's going, nah, I'm not hungry, I'd rather sit here and think about other things. And it was like, oh my god, like, it just, like, I don't know, like, whatever she was going through, like, that was some good stuff. Like, she was feeling good, like, really good. And it really got me thinking while she's doing this processing. I'm thinking, wow, like, that's awesome. And I think what was happening was that the session that we'd had was really short, but it had felt more like when horses play in the field. Like, I'd just come up, seen she was uncomfortable, dominated her into a little bit of movement until she felt better, and then hung out with her. And that is basically the pattern that horses follow. And that was really interesting, and that motivated me that maybe I can do that with Lawrence, and just build it up a bit more slowly. Yeah, but maybe that's what I can do with Lawrence. Yeah, and maybe that will be okay, you know, that I can do it within the session. Because I was thinking, like, maybe I need to do 2 sessions, like maybe I need to, you know, go over here, like go over and do freedom-based stuff, leave on a good moment, come and do Mia, come back and do like a purely like dominant session with some like passivity at the end. I just do 2 shorter sessions, but I think I can already see that it's going to be like difficult for me to always have the time for that. Again, I'm not being consistent in giving him the fitness, whereas feeling like that it's like a very short amount of time that I need to do in the session. But actually, if I did that consistently, after a while, probably the relationship with the haltering probably will get better, and I can extend that amount of time. It's not really what I want to play with, but I think I do need to give him a little bit of fitness back from where he's at now that we've potentially fixed this lameness. And yeah, just really see where we go from there. So yeah, so it was a good session. Feel good about it, definitely.